Welcome to episode 10 of the Mule Taming series, where we take two feral mules and teach them the basics of groundwork. Brownie did pretty good today, but we're going to start with a review of the prerequisite cycle ways. Starting with lateral flexion, we've made phenomenal progress. We're getting there with a vertical flexion, but today she wasn't too keen on the idea. She's doing a great job at yielding the hindquarters in both directions. She's not requiring as much pressure when it comes to yielding the forequarters either. She's more responsive when backing up and will actually do it just off my body language. She's doing better at picking up the feet. Her front feet she's doing great. I'm still using the lead rope on the hinds. So today we're going to introduce Brownie to a saddle and a saddle pad. So in the past I've used the lunging surcingle because that's a great way that I can start getting a young horse or equine used to being cinched up and just things on their back in general. But because Brownie did super well with that, I'm going to try and get both the saddle pad and the saddle on her. We may not cinch it up today, but we're going to see how she does with that. Similar to how I introduced Brownie to the surcingle, I'm going to do the same thing with the saddle pad. I'm going to start throwing it towards her. You can see that she's kind of just standing there, but the second it touches her, she does do a little bit of a jump. She doesn't try to bolt or run away or anything like that, but what I'm doing here is I'm just starting to get her used to the sound of the pad, what the pad looks like, and all that fun stuff, and I'm going to kind of swing it a little bit and throw it on her back, and then I'm going to take a moment to let her kind of breathe and process what we're doing. I don't want to just throw the pad on her and freak her out to the point where I push her over the threshold and she starts to shut down. So I'm just going little by little. I swing the pad. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So now I'm going off to the other side. And you can see that she's already kind of getting a little bit more comfortable with me swinging it and throwing it on her. She's not like jumping as much. She is still jumping. She's still swishing her tail. Her head's still pretty high. So she's still communicating that she's uncomfortable with the situation, especially because she does still kind of like flinch or give me a little bit of a jump sometimes when I do touch her with the pad. You can see right about here, I'm able to throw that pad all the way on her back. She gave me a little bit of a jump and she's moving around a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and talk to her softly. I'm going to give her some pets and show her that everything's okay. I take that pad off on the opposite side and then I'm going to work on throwing it back on her. And so the biggest thing with this is just repetition. I'm going to throw it on her back and take it off her back and throw it on her back and take it off her back. And the more times that I do this, as long as she's staying under the threshold, she's not trying to bolt or escape or get away from me. The more times I do this, the more she's going to realize that this saddle pad is really not a big deal. So this time I threw it on her back. She kind of moved like 2 or 3 steps and that was it. I take it off the other side. I throw it on her back. She's still moving around a little bit, but she's not like jumping or trying to walk forward or anything crazy like that. So just those few minutes of working with throwing that pad on and off and on and off, you can already see that she's getting a lot more comfortable with the pad and with it on her back and stuff like that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with Brownie on moving with the pad on her back. So as I've kind of mentioned before, when you are starting a colt under saddle, having the pad, having the saddle, having it all cinched up, all of that stuff is new to them. It's going to feel weird. And so I want to make sure that I can get some forward movement out of her. I want to make sure that even though the pad is weird and this is new, that she's still comfortable moving her feet. Because if she decides to just kind of stand there and plant her feet, that's a sign that she's kind of starting to shut down. So I really don't want to progress until I've got her moving her feet with the pad on her back, which you can see I was starting to get some steps out of her right there. Now I go to grab the saddle. So I have a really shitty quality Western saddle that I use specifically for colt starting. And I use it for colt starting because if it goes to fall in the dirt, if the horse goes to have some type of severe reaction, which I usually try to prevent, I really don't care if my colt starting saddle gets damaged or thrown in the dirt because it was a cheap deal that I found on Facebook Marketplace. It's not really riding quality. The leather's all bent out of shape and stuff. And so that's what my colt starting saddle is for. Once I trust both Brownie and Blondie more with my colt starting saddle, then I'll go to put like my nicer saddles on them or get the pack saddle on them because those are things that I really don't want to get damaged. So the same thing that I did with the saddle pad, I'm going to do with this saddle as well. I'm going to start bringing it towards her side. I'm talking to my boyfriend here real quick, so bear with me. But I'm bringing it towards her side. I'm going to wave it towards her side. And when she's standing here nice and polite is when I'm going to take a moment, stop swinging, and kind of release that pressure. Because I want to show her that when she stands and when she's polite and she's not freaking out about it, that's typically when the saddle goes away. Now, if she were to start reaching the point where she would try to bolt, I would take things a little bit slower and try to take the saddle away. You can see right here, I'm able to start kind of lifting it up and putting it more towards her back. The second I actually get it on her back, she does take off. I do not hold on to the lead rope, and she kind of started to do what Blondie was doing that one day, so I might end up taking her into a smaller pen when I work on the saddle the next time. It really just depends how the remainder of the session goes. Now that I've caught her, I'm going to work on throwing that saddle pad on and off of her again. Again, I just want to continue to try and break this down, try and take things slow. I don't want to push Brownie over the threshold to the point where she feels like she has to run away or she has to escape from me. You can see that I was able to get that pad on her back again. I'm going to take a moment to try and get her to take those few steps forward again. I want to make sure that she's not shutting down. She's not going into freeze mode. Some signs that I can kind of show you that she's not going into freeze mode, while she's not all into moving her feet necessarily, she's not pinning her ears. She's still looking at me and she's still aware of the situation. Whereas when a horse goes to freeze or shut down, oftentimes they won't do any of that. You can see here that I go to pick up the saddle and I'm going to try and do pretty much the exact same process, and I'm just going to continue this repetition. I don't want her to feel the need to bolt again, and so if I'm able to get the saddle on her back, I'm just probably going to call it a day, because again, I want to take it slow. I want to work at her pace, and you can see right here that I'm actually able to very slowly lift that saddle on her back. Her ears are a little bit pinned. She's kind of really focusing on what I'm doing, and so I'm just going to take this nice and slow. I'm able to very easily rest that saddle on her back. I'm going to pet her, and then I'm going to call it a day. Moving on to Miss Blondie, we're going to start with a quick review of the prerequisites like usual. She definitely moved around a lot today with the lateral flexion, so we're going to keep working on this. Vertical flexion, she's not lowering her head as much as I'd like, so this is another thing we'll keep working on. Backing up, I do still have to use a little bit more pressure than I'd prefer. She is doing great at yielding the hindquarters in both directions. We've also made significant progress with the forequarter yields. She's still doing a wonderful job at picking up all 4 feet. Now we're going to move on to the lunging surcicle. So in our last session, I had Blondie in one of these stalls because she has kind of started to develop this habit where she would kind of take off, pull the lead from my hands, and bolt. And so by being in a smaller pen, I was able to have a better handle on her, because at the end of the day, she is a very strong mule, and I am only so strong as a human. And I don't want her to start developing the habit where if she feels like she's afraid, all she has to do is run and bolt. And so now we're going to go back to the round pen today and see if I can start getting the exact same progress that I did in the pen during our last session. I'm going to start off by doing exactly what I've done before, and I'm just going to kind of swing that surcingle around, get some movement out of her. You can see that she's kind of starting to back up, and so I'm going to ask her to move forward, encourage some forward movement before I go back to trying to swing it around. You can see that she's kind of really like moving her body, like her body is very stretched out, and she's leaning back to try and avoid the surcingle. And so my goal is to try and get her to stand still. If I think she's about to bolt or freak out, then I'm going to stop waving the surcingle around, and then I'm going to go back to it. So again, it's just kind of like a process of pressure and release. I'm going to really watch her body language, watch her movements to make sure that I'm not pushing her to the point she feels the need to bolt. So you can see right here, I'm able to get that surcingle on her back, and I'm super duper proud of this, because this shows that just taking her into that smaller pen for that one day, just breaking things up a little more, got her to a point where she knows that she cannot just run and bolt anytime that she feels afraid and, pull me around the round pen. So you can see right here, I'm going to start trying to do it on the other side, and we're going to see if I can get the same results. Again, I'm just going to slowly but surely, I'm going to wave that surcingle around. I'm going to start and stop, from time to time, and just really pay attention to her body language, to her movements, because I don't want her to continue going back to that habit. Even though she's really only done it a few times, I don't want it to become a consistent habit. You can see again right here, I'm able to get that surcingle on her back again. She is swishing her tail. Her head's a little bit high. All things that, are just her communicating that she's still a little bit uncomfortable with it, but she's not trying to bolt or take off. And so in my eyes, this is progress in itself. So what I'm going to try and do now is I'm going to actually try and cinch up the surcingle. Once Blondie has reached a point where I can put the surcingle on her back and cinch it up, then we can start progressing to putting on the colt starting saddle like I did with Brownie. So we're going to see how she does with these surcingles cinched up. As I mentioned in my previous episode as well, when I did cinch it up with Brownie, sometimes an equine is going to buck. Now, it's one thing if they are running and bucking and losing their absolute minds. If if the horse or the mule is doing that when you're starting them, you missed a step. But if they let off a few bucks, a few little crow hops here and there, that's okay. It's completely and totally normal, because sometimes having that cinch on can be a very weird feeling. And so bucking is just a way that they kind of react to that feeling, kind of try to get a feel for it. So if your equine bucks when you're starting them under saddle, don't panic. I know there's a lot of animal activists out there who say if your horse even lets off one buck, you failed. That is a complete and total lie. Just remember, there is a difference between a horse who is completely losing their mind and bucking and rearing and freaking the fuck out, and a horseshoe is just trying to get a feel for something new. So now for the moment of truth, I'm going to start lunging Blondie in a circle around me, so I can start getting her to move her feet and start to kind of see how she's going to react to the cinch being done up for the very first time. So I'm going to point with my hand. You can see that she's kind of looking at me like I don't really know if I want to move, and then eventually I do get her to start making some circles around me. You can see that she's kind of a little bit sticky. She's a little bit stiff. She goes to stop at the gate right here. I haven't had issues with her stopping while lunging in a while, but because this is something new, this seems to be a behavior that is coming back out, which is okay. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to encourage her to go in the direction that I wanted her to go in. I did struggle to get her going, so I let her go in the opposite direction, which she seemed a little bit more okay with. You can see that she's, again, she's continuing to stop and face me, but she is going. Right there, she kind of gave me a little bit of like a mini rear as she went to change direction, which is okay. My goal right here is I just want her to get moving her feet. I want her to give me several consistent circles in one direction, or both directions actually, and I want to start getting some of that consistency out of her, because you can see that she's a little bit sticky, and by sticky I mean she's stopping a lot. She's trying to get an idea for the cinch, and she's not a huge fan of it. And so once I can start getting some consistent circles out of her, I'm just going to try to continue to encourage her forward, get those circles out of her so that I can have her, or help her get a little bit more comfortable with the cinch and realize that it's not all that bad. Right there, she kind of gave me a little bit of a buck, nothing too crazy. Again, she's not over the threshold. She's definitely nearing the threshold. You can tell that she doesn't like it. She's not a fan of the cinch, but overall, she's not to the point where she's panicking or losing her absolute mind. She's just like, I don't know if I like this. I'm going to keep looking at you. I'm going to keep stopping. And again, all I'm going to do to respond to this is continue to encourage her forward and try to get some consistent circles out of her. After several minutes of just driving her forward, I am able to get some consistent circles out of her. She is still a little bit sticky. You can see that she kind of goes to stop right here, but it doesn't take as much to get her going. So I'm going to take this as a win. The final thing I'm going to work on with Blondie today is trying to trim up her front feet. She has reached a point where she holds up her front feet pretty well. I've even started experimenting with putting her front feet between my legs. So I'm going to try and at least trim her up a little bit. I'm not going to attempt her hinds. I'm not going to try rasping or the hoof stand or anything crazy. My goal is to just cut off some of that excess toe, try and get her sole down a little bit more, as well as those bars, because her hooves are definitely in need of attention. And so you can see right here that I've got her hoof in between my legs, and I'm able to start pretty much just immediately nipping away at them and starting to clean them up a little bit. And she's standing. You know, she kind of puts her ears forward to look at something off in the distance. She is swishing her tails, but you can also notice that her hind end is cocked. She could be swishing the tails just due to the flies, because if you look at the rest of her body language, she doesn't look freaked out or panicked or anything crazy like that. So when I'm doing the first trim on a horse or an equine that it doesn't really have a lot of experience with this type of stuff, I always try to do this in small increments. I'll make them take several steps forward. I might do some nipping, and then I'll give them a break, and I want to make this the most positive experience that I can for their first trim, because farrier work is something that is super duper important for the entirety of the horse or mule's life. And so I just want to make absolutely sure that I can that I make this a good first experience so that I can set her up for success for future farrier visits. So you can see right here again, I'm starting to nip at that hoof again, just starting to continue to clean it up, and she's just standing there and letting me do it. So I'm super duper proud of this. I go to move on to her other front leg, and you can see that I have pretty much the same reaction. She's still standing there. She's letting me nip away at her leg, and she's really not giving me too much. So overall, I am super duper proud of this, and I'm just so relieved that I'm able to finally start cleaning up her hooves a little bit, and I'm hoping that I can start doing the same with her hinds, as well as getting to this point with Brownie as well.